Right, welcome back. Next up, we have two medium sessions. There'll be 15 minutes each, and then we have time for questions. Um, so first up, we have the acquisition of cereals for a niche collection by Jordan Clare, Steph Noel, and Joel Smalley. And then right after that will be Opera AI, experimenting with Cataloger GPT to translate mark records for filmed operas by Chelsea Gizzy. So I'm going to stop sharing and then our first set of presenters can share their screen. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our presentation, The Acquisition of Serials for a Niche Collection. This presentation was inspired by shared collaborative efforts to build a niche collection within ASU Library. Next slide, please. My name is Jordan Clare, and I am an Assistant Acquisitions Librarian with ASU Library at Arizona State University. I am part of the Acquisitions and Metadata Department that is in Mesa, Arizona.
My name is Steph Noell, and I am the head librarian for ASU's California Center Library in Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Joel Smalley. I'm the lead for bibliographic and serials maintenance in the acquisitions and metadata unit, and I am also based in Mesa, Arizona.
So next slide, please. So for a little bit of background on my library, we started out as what was originally the Fashion Institute of California, which was founded in 1969 by Tony Hoberg in downtown LA. Within the first year, they changed the name from FIC to FIDM, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. That became the fashion school in Los Angeles. Next slide, please. In 1975, FIDM, as it is colloquially known, funded its library, and they hired their first librarian, Casey Hale, within that first year of the library being funded. And now here we are. Oh my gosh, it's been 50 years. And we are now the largest specialized collection for fashion on the West Coast in libraries. Next slide, please. In 2022, Arizona State University purchased the school, FIDM, and this past summer, we renamed the library from ASU FIDM Library to the ASU California Center Library to encompass the broader programs that we are working with outside of just fashion. We also work with film for the Sidney Poitier School of Film, as well as the Walter Cronkite School for Journalism. Next slide, please. So our serials at my library are very niche, lots of fashion titles as well as arts and culture, film, and some of our most niche titles tend to be our trend forecast reports. So our serials are everything from the big media company publications like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar down to small press and independent titles. So we have everything from glossy magazines, oversized magazines in our trend reports, and then we have additional trend forecasting reports, also known as predictives, that are essentially binders filled with inspirational materials for our students and researchers. These trend forecasting reports are published biannually according to the fashion seasons, so autumn, winter, and spring, summer. And what's unique about them is they are publishing 18 months in advance. So if we're getting the current season in, we're already a year and a half behind. So these are very special publications, not held widely by a lot of libraries. And our students are very analog focused. So they do access digital materials, but they prefer the physical overall. So next slide, please.
Thank you, Steph. So, acquisitions and accounting is generally the first point of contact for requesting new serials to support the California Center Library. As an assistant acquisitions librarian, it is my role to oversee the ordering, invoicing, and payment processing for library collection materials. When the acquisitions and accounting unit started acquiring new serials for the ASU FIDM program, the niche qualities of these library materials quickly became evident. Niche serials can be highly specialized, and they sometimes require workflow adjustments that are comparable to the processes associated with acquiring special collections materials. These processes are now a routine for working with niche fashion serials. Next slide, please. Serial enumeration and chronology are typically represented with numerical values. However, niche serials may have different methods of indicating this information. In the case of fashion serials, the fashion season and the fashion year are important identifiers. My colleagues and I who initiate the ordering of fashion serials have familiarized ourselves with nuances in how this information is conveyed. For example, fashion publishers may make aesthetic decisions about how to represent title, enumeration, and chronology, and can result in variation in the way this information appears within the same serial. Print fashion serials may have tactile additions, such as fabric swatches, so we are attentive to understanding what counts as primary material and supplemental materials with these serials. Next slide, please. Niche serials are usually published by small press vendors. In some instances, our ordering for niche collection materials may be the first instance where a small press vendor is working with a large academic institution. My communication with small press vendors often focuses on making sure that we can onboard the small press publisher as an authorized vendor for our academic institution. There can be variation from one fiscal year to the next when it comes to the way that payments are handled, so we try to maintain multiple points of contact with small press vendors. This is especially important for instances where we have ongoing serial renewals every year. Next slide, please. On this slide, I have provided a bit of data about the collection from fiscal year 2025. Most titles that we acquire for the ASU California Center Library are print, with print serials being the second most common material type acquired. Although we are still at the beginning of fiscal year 2026, the serials holdings for this niche collection are increasing. The format type of these serials shapes workflows needed to get these materials to the California Center Library. Next slide, please. Ordinarily, acquisitions and accounting receives physical library materials in Mesa, Arizona. However, since the California Center Library is in Los Angeles, we request that our vendors ship these materials directly there. The acquisitions and accounting unit relies on notifications from colleagues who are at the California Center Library to confirm that the fashion serials are as they were requested. This is usually representative of the very first ordering of a new niche serial. After the acquisitions and accounting unit starts out with their initial order of a brand new serial, this workflow is passed along to my colleagues in the serials maintenance unit. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to go in a little more detail about the ways that we've been adapting to meet the needs of this new niche library. And we're coming from being kind of an R1 academic library where all of our resources are mostly digital and we're receiving stuff that way. And so hearing that they want print when I've maybe ordered 3 new print titles since 2017 is very exciting. So all of a sudden I'm hit with an order for 20 new print serials, which warms my serials heart. And the community what we're hearing is the community doesn't really use the online catalog to discover these collections. They are walking into the library to see those. And we also want to make sure we describe these new and unique resources to the best of our abilities. And as Jordan said, the titles are showing up in LA and our metadata specialists are here in Arizona. So to me, this is super exciting to hear that this fashion community is actually coming into the library. And I see that's getting some love in the chat too. So it warms everybody's library heart, right? So they're looking for visual and sometimes tactical materials to inspire them, like Steph said. So they aren't looking through the on catalog to find them. They're coming in, and the public services coordinator who is on site, who is our fashion specialist in that area, is guiding them to these resources. And like they said, these resources are seasonal, but they're also super timely. They got to get there on time so that they can actually know what's going on in the industry. So our acquisitions and metadata staff has had to rely on had to rely on Steph and the public services coordinator there to help us understand the nature of these materials. Like I had no idea what a trend book was. I had to learn about this release schedule where they're coming out 18 months in advance. That's not typical for our print serials collections, and getting them on time is critical if you're trying to keep up with the fashion, the new things going on in the fashion industry. And there can be some sticker shock because these are some professional materials akin to something like a medical library or a law library, where like they're subscribing to them as a private industry. So some sticker shock based on how expensive some of these materials were. And with respect to the metadata, how we think about that discovery is important, since it's going to be this in-person perspective. What kind of records do we need for supplemental materials? Or like what Jordan was saying, for textile swatches, this seasonal or even topical information, does that need to be included? So there's a magazine called Viewpoint Color, which showed up in Steph's collage of some of these beautiful magazines. And it is a beautiful color-themed publication with issue titles like Human Nature, Brain Power, Pleasure, Arise. These are all different like color-themed topics for the issues. Do we need to include that in our metadata as means of discovery for the public services coordinator to show these pieces off to the population coming in? Or do we need to identify variant covers? There's plenty of different variant covers with different models, artists, actors, different photographers. CR Fashion Book has 6 different variant covers for its latest issues. That's a lot of things to consider for metadata. And because we're trying to manage the metadata remotely, the public services coordinator is the one that's actually entering this data for us when she's receiving those pieces over there. So shout out to her as the expert. She knows fashion. She's a photographer. She's the one helping build the community and actually meeting these people when they're coming in. And so we need to consider her thoughts when it comes to things like enumeration and chronology and how we're exposing that information. So she's been putting in issue titles with that human nature, brain power, those kind of pieces of information instead of the specific numbers and volume and issue numbers. So, but what that can cause complications. We're trying to determine, okay, have you received the right pieces if we can't see the volume and issue numbers to make sure that we're receiving everything we're supposed to receive. But there's got to be a balance there. So the key is to have a lot of communication back and forth between them on site and what we're trying to do here. And then kind of coming at it from the other direction, when they're proposing new titles for us to go and get for them, they're usually giving us a title and a brief description, but this is not a metadata expert. So they're just saying, here's the title, here's the information, but maybe no ISSN. So that can create challenges too. So kind of a little mental exercise here is somebody like, here's some words. What do these words have in common? Purple, dazed, pop, costume, tank, basic. Your job now is to find all these magazines with just one word and no ISSN. So no problem, right? So what you have is you're trying to find a needle in an OCLC haystack here. So if you search the word basic in OCLC and you just narrow it to serial titles, you're going to get 10,000 hits, and there's only one OCLC holding for that title. So a little bit of a challenge trying to find it there. There was a title that's just called V, just the letter V, and Roman numeral notes, the letter V, over 140,000 serial search hits in OCLC with 21 OCLC holdings. So some discovery challenges there. So how do I narrow these down? And even if I do, how do I know I found the one that FIDM actually is looking for? So what I did was I actually went to another visual resource, Instagram. So when I jumped into Instagram, you can find out right away whether or not you found the right title. So if you put it in and then the algorithm starts to help you find them too. But you type in basic, I instantly have access to, I can see all the covers. I can see that it's definitely a fashion-oriented magazine. And plus there's links in there so I can get publisher, contact info, back archives, purchasing location, and you can even see issue release dates, which actually becomes really important and helpful too. So now that I kind of know what I'm looking for, should be no problem finding a vendor that has some of these magazines, right? Okay, so in some cases, definitely we were able to utilize EBSCO and Harasowitz to find some of these, but in some cases, their data, and we've used these resources for years. You want to manage your resources through EBSCO and Harasowitz as much as possible. They're great resources for us, but in some cases, some of their data was incorrect. It said it was canceled, but through my Instagram research, I found out, no, this is not actually a cancel resource. Or we might ask them for a quote because they've said, ask us for a quote. And they're like, no, you got to order this direct. And in some cases, they're just not in EBSCO, or they're not in Harasowitz either. So we have to find them somewhere else. So let's go shopping. And what we would love to have as a state school, we would love to have a nice clean invoice that notifies us when it's time to pay for the next year's subscription. But when you're going to these individual websites to purchase it, they don't have invoices for us. So you're going to like shop and you put your credit card in and then it renews. And so each year that you don't have an invoice, which is cool with your accounts payable people, right? Not so much. So I tried an order direct strategy. Now that I'm kind of best friends with Basic Magazine because I found them on Instagram and I followed them on Instagram, I sent them a personalized email and I said, we have a niche library. We know you're a niche publisher. I heavily compliment their publication based on the Instagram pics that I found. I threw myself at their mercy and I said, we're a state school and we have to have invoices to manage this. And so they responded in less than 24 hours and they even said, we're excited about our partnership. So it definitely was an effective strategy and they faithfully have sent us invoices for 2 years in a row now. So that's great. So, and I want to say that it's been successful for 2 out of 3, which is a 66% success rate with a couple of other magazines too. So that said though, and I see some things going on in the chat here, but if you have vendors that you know that could help us out for some of those niche fashion or art publications, please feel free to send them to me. And a couple of last things I just want to say about some of the challenges we're still facing is with things like these trend forecasting books. When they ask you to get them for you, you're already a year and a half behind. So you want to try to get those out as quickly as possible, get those requests going as quickly as possible, and even try to find out how you get those back issues. And we're even finding through some of our subscription services that they're not arriving on time because they're not accustomed to knowing that these should already be released and already be headed towards us. And also because some of these are very small run publications, they're actually selling out before we can even get a hold of them. So some challenges there. And they have also told us that they're trying to build an archive of fashion history through like Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, and getting some of those older issues is a real challenge. So if anybody knows where we can get those, please feel free to email me and let me know that too. But to just kind of sum up, we hope to meet the challenges, those challenges using all the strategies I've kind of talked about, which is importance of listening, communicating, adapting, and thinking outside the box. So that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much. I think there was a lot of sympathizing and seeing similarities in other kinds of collections that are very niche as well. So yeah, there is a question in the chat, but I'll hold it on until after Chelsea's session. So Chelsea, if you don't mind, go ahead and sharing your slides and get going.
All right, yes, of course. While I'm sharing my screen, getting that set up, thank you so much to my co-presenters. That was so interesting, so fascinating to hear about. And thank you to the session chairs for having me here. This is my first NASIG. Really looking forward. Hope everyone can see my screen and hear me also. But I am looking forward to sharing today my method for translating MARC records for filmed operas, basically operas on Blu-ray, into English using GenAI. In my case, the Cataloger GPT module of ChatGPT 4 and now 5. All right. There we go. Before I detail the case study itself, I'll just provide a bit more context about my institution, New York University and Bopes Library, located primarily with campus space in Manhattan and Brooklyn, but also with a number of global sites, including 2 full campuses located in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai. The center, physically, the main location is Bobst Library in Lower Manhattan, and our technical services, knowledge access and resource management, or CARMS, is housed there. We have a floor to ourselves. And we process the materials at the campuses in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, as well as, of course, the NYU New York sites. Then within CARMS, my unit is the metadata strategy unit, comprised of 5 full-time faculty librarians, and that includes our team lead. The way that our work is kind of divided, our position titles all reflect our resource type, essentially. So to zoom in on my audiovisual materials, the materials I work on in the general collection end up in a few different places. Most often our Avery Fisher Center for Music and Media, located within the same building. There are also materials that are housed off-site that can then be, requested. And then, of course, in the case of streaming media, those are accessed either on vendor-supported platforms or on our own NYU stream platform. But the materials that this workflow involves, I've only tested physical materials. I don't think it needs to be a physical materials only kind of workflow. I sort of designed it, piloted it this way, to all be video discs, to all be filmed operas, partially out of luck, partially aiming for consistency and hoping that patterns would emerge, but also partially out of the convenience of being able to pull all of these titles from my COVID era backlog that I was able to finally start seriously addressing last year. With that, I'll share just a little more background on how I came to test this out in the first place. Initially had this idea when I encountered more than once a German language MARC record when I was searching for, of course, English language copy with that 040 subfield B English, and wasn't finding it, but I was finding pretty much complete records in German. I focused on German, but I have also used Italian and French language records, just, to try it out. But overall, German language records for these Blu-ray operas turned out to be an ideal pilot for me. I have knowledge of German, so there was a comfort level there. Using ChatGPT, I thought, is a great Gen AI tool for a beginner. I really consider myself an AI novice. There's so much out there that I just do not know. So I thought this is a great entry-level opportunity, and this is comparatively a low lift. And then being able to identify, which I didn't think I could at first, be proactive about testing this workflow. I thought I would just have to encounter it. But after realizing that, yes, the pattern I was so hoping for did emerge, I just pulled as many Blu-ray operas as I could find really from the backlog. And I am, after all, able to sort of productively work on this, which at last brings me to the workflow as it was and is. After the record is identified, after searching in connection and not finding my English language copy, but something in German, a PDF needs to be created to upload to ChatGPT. I've been using print to PDF. It's just, it works, it's easy. And then taking that to ChatGPT, using this exact prompt, it's very short, but it's in bold there. Create an English language MARC record from the provided content with the attached PDF, and then go. I think, I don't know, there's opportunities here to add something like mentioning specifically that it should be RDA, things like that. But I also think sometimes the simplest prompt is all you need to get the work done. And before I finish describing the case study, I do want to say as a quick aside that I thought maybe I could get a MARC edit file created for me, and it did not work. I was not so lucky. I got these instructions, I got a Python script, and I decided not to do it that way. It actually works just as well. It's very quick to copy code, which the MARC record in English is in a box like this, where it could just be copied and pasted into a blank MARC edit file. I don't do a lot of the work in MarcEdit. I just use that file format basically to then upload the English language record back into Connection. And this, I think it's really important to say that this is the part where like my human work, my human eyes, and being a metadata librarian with that training comes back into play. This is the point where I do the cataloging that still needs to be done, assigning the subject and genre terms myself, otherwise enhancing the record to fall in to follow the best practices for audiovisual resources, anything like that. And then of course, always making sure that it passes, that it validates in Connection. After which it's just a matter of producing the record, working out of a save file, updating the holdings, and then exporting to Alma. In the next few slides, I have some screenshots of what the very first test looked like once it was in English, first in MarcEdit, then in my save file. It wasn't perfect. It's still not perfect. Most of these are still in save files. And before I, as I get into my last few slides, I think this is a good place to mention how experimental an approach that I sort of took with this. And also think it's important to mention here that there was were a few instances where I thought, okay, great, like it's quite an effective translation from German to English, but I want to note this partial translation where it didn't quite get all the way there. In the 264 highlighted there, the text in brackets did not translate into place of publication not identified, and I'm not sure exactly why that is. I suspect that it's because that text sort of stands out as the only bracketed text aside from the subfield C numerals 2022. So I don't know, I found that interesting, but also noted that in the 245 Così fan tutte, the title of the opera remained in Italian as it should have. Let's see. As for my next steps and my final thoughts, all condensed into one slide. Maybe just final thoughts for this moment. But since trying this for the first time, I've changed a few things, I've added a few things. For example, I expanded my prompt engineering, thought about how much more of this work could happen in the cataloger GPT module. An example of that was converting some of, in this case, some of the contributors, the personal names, the corporate names, and the subfield 4 relator term codes, just the 3-letter codes needed to be converted to the subfield E full terms. So it reads fully composer, conductor, anything that's needed. I've also been trying to work up the courage really to do this with multiple records at once, either uploading multiple PDFs or compressing them all into one PDF, especially since MarcEdit, I think, really is designed. It's great for batch work. It can really it's great for batch work, enough said. And then as far as, this actually, I did not add to the slide, but it occurred to me also recently, and I haven't had the opportunity to try it since I've been actually on leave and away from my desk for the past few weeks, but I wonder how uniform a result I would get if I put German, French, Italian, just a combination to all be translated from a set of different languages into English. And as far as Mark thoughts more generally, I'm also interested in what I think is really important and should be an ongoing conversation about just best practices for AI use in cataloging, AI-assisted metadata, AI-assisted translation, what guidelines will look like, in particular, emerging PCC best practices for how to encode the fact that AI was used in creating this metadata, how to make sure that that's kind of clear in the MARC record. And then more broadly, a real question I guess I had going into this was, at what point is a record that I've found full enough for this to be an actual kind of time saver, basically? And I think in the case where the records I've discovered are like, if the only reason that I haven't used it as copy is because it's not in English, I think it does save me a lot of time. Than me maybe pinning the German record in connection and translating it in my head and getting sort of stuck in that. But in cases of brief records in really any language, I think there are plenty of functionalities in OCLC to use, like the derive function that I use a lot, using macros, or honestly just a blank work form, just cataloging, original cataloging. And then finally, another thing I forgot to add to this slide was a recent conversation I had after giving a version of this to talk to my AI study group in my department at NYU. I had an interesting follow-up chat with a colleague, the metadata librarian for the humanities, who's working on monographs in multiple scripts, multiple non-Latin scripts in particular. And he's interested in seeing what the results might be going between working with just a number of different scripts. And so I'll see maybe when I return from research leave, no pressure to him, of course, to see if that was pursued. And then all of that being said, I would love to hear, I hope I sort of stayed within time to have the questions and answer session. Obviously, as I said, I'm a novice with this type of work, so I'm interested in hearing from others on or off Zoom. There's my email. If you want to sort of get into how small my screenshots were, I'm happy to send better versions of them. And with that, I'll stop sharing and say thanks one more time.
Thank you, Chelsea. We do have a couple of questions. A question for you is the cataloger module built by OpenAI or someone else? Asking because individuals can create bots on po.com, others can subscribe to. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh, okay, honestly, good thing I was muted, because I was saying, wow, like I'm actually not sure. I do think it's an open AI. At least they have a hand in it. I'm not sure who else has built it, but I can find that answer.
Somebody in the chat asked, is ChatGPT a product?
In the sense that it is part of, like, it's accessed through ChatGPT, and can be subscribed to, I guess, yes, it is. When I should have mentioned that when in doing this work, I have like my departmental CARMS dashboard to do this work. So I do have access to like a version that's paid for. So yes, in that sense, it is, it's a product, it's commodified in a way.
Right, okay, thanks. I'm scrolling through to see if I've missed anything else. There was a lot of chatter regarding the session for Jordan, Joel, and Steph. Sorry, I'm still scrolling. Okay, let me go back down.
I was doing my best to answer in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Chelsea, somebody asked, I think a little bit further on that prior question, do you have a personal license or is it NYU site license?
Yeah, it is a site license. I'm not sure, since my dashboard is really just like a few of us in my specific department. I'm sure that there are others within NYU who have their own licenses. It seems like it's not very centralized, but yes, it is a like an institutional license.
Okay. For the ASU presentation, do you have the ability to use PayPal or Venmo to pay your small vendors?
Yeah, I think we do. We have done that before. We've used PayPal. So that is one of the ways that we've done it for sure. I think it still ends up being a credit card payment, and then you have to directly go through the statements. But it is a good solution because it's a lot more streamlined.
Okay, and then a comment was, I see a lot of parallels with our work with poetry materials. A lot of the suppliers are the poets. Invoicing is a tricky issue for sure. Let's see, for Chelsea, does NYU have any limitations for what information you can input into ChatGPT?
Another question that I'm not sure that I have the answer to. I know that, I'm really not sure what the limit is. I am I think part of why I've sort of self-deprecatingly continually described myself as like the novice is that I sort of have some colleagues who I think of as sort of the like Gen AI kind of super users that are working with tools that seem a lot more powerful. And so I wonder what the limit is. I feel like I'm really not sure. There may be one, but unfortunately I'm like the worst person to ask.
No, no. Like you said, you were testing it out and seeing, so hopefully it's not
Yeah.
like too small.
Yeah, I haven't really ever like an admin has never jumped in and been like, oh, Chelsea, actually like stop or anything like that. But I've done really so little that I haven't luckily had that problem.
Okay, so make sure we have about 3 minutes left. And if somebody wants to, say their question out loud, I'm happy to unmute you as well. Just raise your hand. Not see any questions or hands raised. Um, oh, sorry, I just saw something in the chat. Oh, okay. Question in the chat. Later recessions and recordings, yes. So we are going to share out recordings for all the virtual live sessions too. So if you miss anything, you can come back. So yes. So thank y'all for this. I guess I'll go ahead and wrap it up if there's no other questions. Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank our speakers for their sessions. Both were amazing, and I think a lot of good chats going on and good questions too. So thank you for your time and for joining us at NASIG Autumn.